Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of Straight Talks F1. Today we are going to revisit the 2012 F1 season, one of my favorite F1 seasons, and in general a fan favorite because it gave so many memorable battles. A title battle for the ages between Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso, and it was a season when we had six world champions on the grid. We had Schumacher, Kimi Raikkonen, Alonso, Hamilton, Vettel himself, and Jensen Button. So it was a season that gave seven different race winners in the first seven races. Can you believe that? Seven different race winners. It has never happened. It had never happened before. It has never happened ever since then. So that was the epic nature of that season. And a year when we had like multiple teams in the mix. We had McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes even at times. Williams got a win. Can you believe that? Like Williams, who had not won for a while. 2003 was the last time before 2012 when they won a race, and Williams won in 2012. And ever since then, they haven't won a race. That still remains their last race win. But yeah, that's something we're going to look forward to. So let's dive into it. Now, the season started. Now, Sebastian Vettel eventually won the title, but it never looked like they were the favorites from the start of that season. McLaren was the car to beat. McLaren was the team that had two world champions in Button and Hamilton. And Fernando Alonso wasn't really the threat that people thought it may be at the start of the season, at least. Because Ferrari were having a dog of a car. The F2012 wasn't a car that one would like to compete with. Fernando Alonso carried them in that season. Like Fernando Alonso got majority of the points. Felipe Massa was very behind, and it sort of showed where Alonso was in terms of the peak of his powers in terms of performance in that season. So we start with the first race of the year. It was Australia, obviously, naturally the season opener, and McLaren, as I said, looked like a car to beat. They got the front row. They locked out the front row. But in the race, Jensen Button won the race, but Hamilton had to settle for P3, and Sebastian Vettel got the second place. And Webber took fourth place. It looked like a very straightforward race between McLaren and Red Bull. Fernando Alonso qualified 12th. Ferrari, as I said, very abysmal car in terms of performance, in terms of single lap pace, race pace. But Alonso carried it throughout the season, and that race again qualified 12th on the grid, got to fifth on the grid eventually, fifth at the checkered flag. And Yamasa not anywhere near the top five, but Australia was a really exciting race. If one wants to rewatch it, definitely at the end of the race there was a heat finish between Sergio Perez, Daniel Ricciardo. There was a driver called John Eric Verne and Paul de Resta for Force India. It was an epic heat finish, all battling for the final positions of the points, P7 to P10. But eventually, Australia was a very entertaining race. McLaren, Jensen Button taking down that first win, and it looked like okay, McLaren maybe had their season started on the right note, but it wasn't going to be, as we discover later on. McLaren's season really derails as we go into the latter part of the season. Then comes Malaysia, the Malaysian Grand Prix, second race of the year, and it was a rainy. It was rainy conditions at Malaysia, the Sepang International Circuit. Ferrari were there or thereabouts in terms of performance, and Fernando Alonso knows how to get a there or thereabouts car. And when it's raining, the driver makes all the difference. And a driver of Fernando Alonso's caliber made the difference in Sepang, made the difference in Malaysia. He won that race under changeable conditions, and one would expect McLaren were on the front row. Jensen Button, Hamilton, two British drivers. One would expect them to perform well in terms of their wet weather ability, but eventually they faltered. Jensen Button finished 14th in Malaysia. Hamilton still got the podium in P3. He was on pole, but he could not capitalize on that. And it was Fernando Alonso from Sergio Perez. It was a very chaotic race. There was rain. There were multiple pit stops. First, they went on the intermediates, then they switched to slick tires. So things were looking very chaotic. Alonso arose out of that chaos as the leader of the race, and it was Sergio Perez in a Sauber Ferrari chasing Alonso down. In a Sauber Ferrari, Perez chasing Alonso down. It was only second season in F1, and Perez was there. Checo Perez, it looked like he might get his maiden win, but a mistake on lap 51 and his challenge just derailed, withered away. And Alonso took the win. Alonso took the win on people did not expect Ferrari to perform at that level, but Fernando Alonso had different ideas. He had different ideas, and when the rain came down, and when situations favored him in terms of chaos on the grid, chaos in terms of other crashes and other drivers taking each other out, Alonso capitalized on those things. And that's how the Malaysian Grand Prix unfolded with Fernando Alonso taking the win. So next race in China, and China completely threw a curveball at everybody because it was Mercedes, and Mercedes were looking strong in China even before coming to China, they had the F duct effect, as they said, and there was a controversy with the FI. They had investigated the car in terms of having double DRS, that the rear wing of the car had an advantage over other cars, that they may have a double DRS effect that will help them on the long straights of China, on the long straights of China. And it was Nico Rosberg. Nico Rosberg who took pole position, won the race. Michael Schumacher was there. He looked fast during the practices, but in qualifying also he got to a good decent position on the grid. But eventually, when the race came along, he had an incident and he had to retire his car. So it was Nico Rosberg's race. It was his maiden win, a man who was destined to be a world champion, who eventually got his fate with Mercedes in 2016 after all that drama with Hamilton. But eventually, that became his first, the 2012 Chinese Grand Prix, and that was the third race of the season with Rosberg and Mercedes taking down the third win, the third different winner of that season. And going into Bahrain, fans looked at it and they were like, wait a minute, Sebastian Vettel has won back-to-back championships in 2010 and 2011. Where is Red Bull? They haven't turned up. Ferrari has got a win, Mercedes have got a win, McLaren have got a win. Where's Sebastian Vettel? And then came Bahrain and then came Red Bull, finally opening the account in the 2012 season. It was a challenging one because they had Kimi Raikkonen in a Lotus returning to F1 in his fourth race of his returning season, and he was hot on Vettel's heels. He looked very, very fast in terms of taking that win, and it at one point it felt like, okay, Kimi Raikkonen just may get Sebastian Vettel here, but yeah, Vettel at his peak, at his very best, handled it very well, handled it in a calm manner, and got that win. It was a double podium for Lotus, Raikkonen and Roman Grosjean getting on the podium. So Bahrain was a really good one for Red Bull in terms of opening their account in the championship and staking claim as the defending champions, which is where Vettel also took the championship lead, and it sort of felt like, okay, things are coming back to normal now. Vettel and Red Bull will start their dominant run once again, but it wasn't to be. We come to the Spanish Grand Prix, and it things get a lot more crazier. Williams got the win. Pastor Maldonado, a man who is known for crashing, a man who is always involved in controversies, who was always involved in crashes and collisions, just got the luck of the draw, was in the right place at the right time, courtesy of Lewis Hamilton getting a penalty for not having sufficient fuel at the end of qualifying. Well, Lewis Hamilton did the Lewis Hamilton thing. He got pole, but because his car did not have enough fuel at the end of qualifying, the FI demoted him to the back of the grid. And this gave Maldonado the pole position. So Barcelona, Spain, it's a not an easy track to overtake. And when you're starting on pole and at a track that's not easy to overtake, the chances of win obviously increase. But the man besides Maldonado was Fernando Alonso, the master of race starts, the master of overtaking and ensuring that, okay, he's given that high of a grid slot in P2. He's gonna take it. He's gonna go for the kill. He's gonna take the lead of the race and he's gonna win it. And that's what he did. Maldonado lost the lead at the start of that Spanish Grand Prix, but eventually, after multiple pit stops, it was a two-stop strategy back then, and Maldonado got the race lead back at the end of that second stop, and he held on to it, holding off Alonso in Barcelona at his home Grand Prix. That was something out of this world. Maldonado's only win in F1 failed it. The man hasn't really performed at that kind of level ever since uh, till he was there in F1, and even before that, he was always having this reputation of crashing and colliding with others. But 2012 Barcelona, Pastor Maldonado, it was Pastor Maldonado. So that was the race in Spain. It always seems like a boring one, but things happen in Barcelona. And another thing that happened in Barcelona was Michael Schumacher colliding with Bruno Senna. How is that very significant? Because Schumacher got a five-place penalty, which he arguably did not deserve. And how that affected the following race was in Monaco, and Michael Schumacher in his Mercedes was fastest in qualifying. He got pole position. So it looked like it could be a Michael Schumacher pole position and a Michael Schumacher win in Monaco, because when you get pole in Monaco, you win in Monaco. But that wasn't to be, because he had a five-place grid though after Barcelona, after colliding with Bruno Senna. So that demoted Schumacher to the back of the grid. So it wasn't a Schumacher pole. Instead, it was Mark Webber for Red Bull. And Sebastian Vettel was thereabouts in that path, but it was Mark Webber. And Mark Webber had a bit of grinding race. He had tire degradation issues. He had Nico Rosberg and Fernando Alonso behind him challenging for the lead. And it sort of felt that, Mark Webber may just succumb to the pressure that's coming behind him. Sebastian Vettel eventually finished fourth, but Mark Webber held on to take that win. And it was the sixth different winner of the season, sixth different winner of the year. Red Bull had some protest issues with their car's floor. Some teams had protested that Red Bull is using some illegal parts on the floor. So things did not look the best in terms of Red Bull retaining their results in Monaco. But yeah, Mark Webber held on. Mark Webber deservedly held on to that win. You just need to keep out of the walls in Monaco after you qualify and pole. You keep out of the walls, you ensure that your tires last, your fuel is enough, and yeah, you manage the race to the checkered flag. So here it is like six different races, six different winners, and who hasn't won till that point? Who may have been a championship contender was Lewis Hamilton. And next race, and Lewis Hamilton loves Canada. He just loves to perform in Canada. He got his maiden race win over there, and in 2012 as well. That's what he did, what he knows best to do. It looked good in terms of his qualifying. He qualified second. Vettel was on pole, and Vettel would have thought he could have won that race. He surely could have. Fernando Alonso was there in the hunt in the top four, and that was the battle for that Canadian Grand Prix. Hamilton, Alonso, Vettel. But what McLaren somehow managed to do that in that race, which they did not do in that season entirely for Hamilton, was to get the strategy on point and get the pit stops on point. Hamilton was facing a lot of pit stop problems from the McLaren pit crew, and that's how they got that race victory. It was a two-stop strategy from Hamilton and McLaren, and at the other end, from Alonso and Vettel, they opted for a one-stop strategy, which wasn't the optimal strategy, still isn't the optimal strategy in Canada, in Montreal. So that was the story in Canada. Seven different winner in the seventh race of the year. And the 2012 season looked really jam-packed in terms of title battle, AC title battle, because Hamilton was leading the championship. at the end of the Canadian Grand Prix by 2 points. Alonso was behind him and Vettel behind him 3 points. Three drivers at the top of the championship standings, separated by 3 points. But Hamilton's title bid eventually derailed. But at that particular point of time, with seven winners in seven races, it really felt like the 2012 season could be one of the most epic title battles where we don't know what was going to happen. And eventually, that's how it panned out, maybe with lesser drivers, just two drivers, with the other contenders falling out eventually. But yeah, right. Seven winners in seven races. It cannot get much more exciting or much more chaotic, right? The next race in Valencia, somebody had to win the second race of the year, their second race of the year. And it happened. It happened. But it happened in very chaotic circumstances. It was the European Grand Prix in Valencia, Spain, a second home race for Fernando Alonso, but he qualified in P11th. Again, that Ferrari not helping Alonso in terms of qualifying, but he had the race at his disposal. He had the race wide open at his disposal because he knew it was his home track. He had the home crowd to support, and he delivered in terms of the race pace, and he delivered in terms of overtaking, and things helped him in terms of people crashing out ahead of him. Vettel and Hamilton, the two contenders who he was fighting for the championship, they both retired from Valencia. They did not finish that race in Valencia. Vettel due to a car failure, and Hamilton colliding with the Spanish Grand Prix winner, Pastor Maldonado. Maldonado doing Maldonado things. He was back to doing his usual habit, which has been famous for, crashing into another driver. And that cost Hamilton the race. And Fernando Alonso carved his way through masterfully. It was an Alonso masterclass, like it was in Malaysia. Claim his second win of the year. And here's an interesting story about that podium. He had Kimi Raikkonen and Michael Schumacher on the podium beside him. And there is the tradition of one representative of the winning constructor going on the podium. So for Ferrari, it was Andrea Stella back then, who was Alonso's race engineer. And the interesting fact about Andrea Stella is who's currently McLaren's team principal as well, is Andrea Stella worked both with Raikkonen and Schumacher. He was the race engineer when they were at Ferrari, and that was the case. So it was basically a reunion for Understella with all the three world champion drivers on the Valencia podium. Sort of a reunion moment, and a wholesome story, I would say. But yeah, in terms of the championship, Alonso had got a second win, and it sort of staked his claim on the championship in terms of his impact as well, because as I mentioned earlier, Ferrari had an abysmal car, and it sort of reflected in the championship standings as well. Uh, the constructor standings, Ferrari were on 122 points, and Alonso had scored 111 of those. Can you believe that? He was carrying Ferrari. He was absolutely carrying Ferrari. There was little contribution from Felipe Massa. 111 of 122 for Alonso. You kind of say, Alonso had the measure of Massa, and Alonso was going to be single handedly carrying Ferrari if they had the chance to take the championship. Only a driver's championship, because the other constructors were pretty solid in terms of both their drivers, and they were looking to seal that constructors for sure. But yeah, moving on from Valencia, the next three races, Silverstone, Germany, Hungary, not much happened. The Silverstone race had a strategic battle in terms of Mark Webber and Fernando Alonso battling it out for the win. Alonso on the losing side of that battle, Webber got his second win of the year, and pretty standard, nothing out of the blue there. Germany was Alonso's race. Germany was Alonso's race weekend. He got pole, he won from pole, and it looked like the other drivers, Vettel, Hamilton, they were sort of losing steam in terms of their championship challenge. It was Alonso's third win of the year, but unfortunately, from Germany till the end of the season, he did not win another race. and that probably arguably cost him the title. One can say had he got one more win after Germany, things could have been different maybe. But yeah, it's that's how it panned out in terms of Germany sort of sealed Alonso's mantle as a championship leader. And in Hungary, that title lead went on to 40 points. Lewis Hamilton won that race, but still, Alonso's championship lead extended to 40 points after Hungary. And thereon, the summer break happened. And that's when things start to take a turn in this championship battle. That season, the summer break happened, and after the summer break, when the Belgian Grand Prix happened, uh, things sort of had to turn in terms of Vettel and in terms of Vettel's luck because Fernando Alonso got involved in that mayhem that was caused by Roman Grosjean. A mayhem that earned him a race ban. So it was that chaotic. Like let's picture this. They've lined up for the start of the Belgian Grand Prix. Roman Grosjean, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Vettel was in 10, but all these guys were in the middle of that top 10. Jensen Button ahead, starting at the head of the field, and Kimi Raikkonen in P3. So things were there or thereabouts. It sort of looked like another mixed pack race, like Valencia. It could have gone, but before the first corner, as the race began, Roman Grosjean, he thought he was ahead of Hamilton, but he wasn't. He collided with Hamilton, and he went airborne over Alonso's car. And thank God he got saved because there was no halo back then, and he got saved. And but despite that, it was terminal damage to Alonso's car, terminal damage to Hamilton's car, and Grosjean even wiped out Sergio Perez's Sauber. So eventually, four cars retiring at the start of the Belgian Grand Prix. But things look grim in terms of the championship standings, in terms of how that crash was going to impact the championship battle. And that's what helped Sebastian Vettel. P10 on the grid, he was out of that entire chaos that Grosjean created, and he silently recovered to P2 in that race. Jensen Button won that race. Kimi Raikkonen was third on the podium, and Vettel calmly collected 18 points for the weekend and went home. And Alonso's title lead was just 24 points after Belgium because he did not score any points. It wasn't to be in terms of the momentum shift that Vettel had after the summer break. And Italy was sort of another Uno reverse for Vettel and Alonso. Vettel this time DNF due to a car failure. He also had a drive-through penalty for pushing Alonso off the track early in that race. And towards the end of the race, Vettel had to retire. And Alonso was on the podium P3. Hamilton won a stunning race in Monza, and Checo Perez taking P2. So the Italian Grand Prix pretty standard, nothing crazy. And Alonso got that championship lead back to about 39 points or so over Vettel. Hamilton was the second driver in terms of the standings, but Hamilton wasn't really in the championship battle in terms of performance because he was experiencing a lot of issues in terms of reliability and operations from McLaren's end. Pit stops were a blunder, and which just amplified as the season went on. The next race in Singapore was a perfect example because Hamilton was on pole and he retired from the lead of the race. So that just demonstrates the kind of issues Hamilton faced. But here's the contrasting tale for Sebastian Vettel. Where Hamilton was facing issues and he retired from the lead of the race, this stretch of four races, the Asian leg of that season, Singapore, uh, Japan, Korea, India, these four races really decisively swung the momentum in Sebastian Vettel's favor because he wasn't leading the championship until then. And when Hamilton retired due to gearbox failure and a couple of pit stop issues, Vettel was the guy to take that lead. And it was only his second win after he won in Bahrain, second win of the year. But these four races from Singapore to India, he won every race, taking maximum 100 points available, whereas Alonso just got 48. So that can have a huge impact in terms of a championship. It did have a big impact, and Alonso he got podiums during those four races. But the next race after Singapore and Japan, a lap one DNF and a 25 point swing in Vettel's favor, it was never going to be easy from that point of time because that just got the championship lead to 4 points. When you're not scoring any points, and when your opponent takes maximum points on the day, it is just going to severely handicap you in terms of the title battle. And that's what happened in terms of Alonso in 2012. Vettel took a grand slam in Japan. He took a grand slam in Suzuka, winning the race from pole, leading every lap and taking the fastest lap too. And a similar story in Korea, sort of, because Mark Webber was on pole, but Vettel got the lead and won that race. And eventually, it sort of felt as if Vettel was just bullying, like he did in 2011 in terms of dominating the championship, winning the championship. He was looking ominous, winning a third title. And that's why I say taking that championship lead in Korea. He got the championship lead by 6 points after the Korean Grand Prix win. And coming to India, it sort of felt okay, here's Sebastian Vettel. He's not going to back down so easily. He's sending a clear message. I'm the defending champion. I won this title back to back 2 times. I'm going to take the hat trick. And again, winning in India from pole, his lead got extended to 13 points. And coming to the final stretch of races in Abu Dhabi, USN, Interlagos, Vettel had the 13-point advantage in his favor, and Alonso looked on the back foot, which he was. But the next race in Abu Dhabi was always going to be a tricky one. And after what happened in qualifying, he faced the same issue that Lewis Hamilton faced in Spain, qualifying on pole and not having enough fuel at the end of qualifying. He got demoted to the back of the grid, and that's where Red Bull made a strategic choice to not start at the back of the grid, but instead take the full penalty by changing more components and making the car more efficient for the race and starting from the pit lane. It was a very strategic choice and Red Bull doing Red Bull things, but that helped Sebastian Vettel a lot to recover in that race. To recover in that race to a podium place, not just a points finish or a top five finish, a podium place in a championship battle that was going down to the wire with a driver like Fernando Alonso. You need every single point and a podium, a P3 finish in Abu Dhabi from the pit lane on a track that is not suitable for overtaking. Sebastian Vettel had it. He absolutely delivered at the top level when it mattered. Alonso finished P2, but it was Kimi Raikkonen's day. It was Kimi Raikkonen who got the victory, who had a very unique deal, who had a unique season coming back after 2 years in F1. He had a deal with Lotus, the bonus deal that gave him 50,000 euros for every point he scored. Eventually, he scored 207 points in that season, finished third in the championship. And he got almost 10 million for that season. He did not get the 10 million euros bonus money that Lotus had promised because he scored so many points and Lotus did not expect for the team to be that competitive in that season. Over the course of over the course of those 2 seasons, Raikkonen scored about 390 points, and his total bonus could have amounted to 19.5 million euros. But yeah, Lotus did not pay him. So, I mean, they did not expect that Kimi Raikkonen would win races, get podiums in that car. But yeah, he did in Abu Dhabi. And it was a Vettel masterclass behind him. From pit lane to P3 had to be his race. So the championship got a bit of balance in terms of getting the deficit to 10 points. Alonso sort of felt like okay, he's in the hunt for the title. But then the next race at Kota was an epic duel in the desert. Alonso again on the podium. He was getting these podiums but he did not get a win after Germany. That could have made the difference. That really could have made the difference. A win in one of these races could have made a world of difference for Fernando Alonso, because that would have just shifted the momentum and the additional 7 points when you win a race rather than when you finish second. It creates an impact, shifting the momentum from your title rival towards you. And that is why Vettel got that stretch of 4 wins in the Asian leg of the season. In USA, Lewis Hamilton won it. Vettel would have thought he could have won that race, but he did not, and Hamilton took that race win. And Kota was absolutely lit. It gave people the hope that a modern, purpose-built circuit can be fun for racing. And Hamilton and Vettel had an epic battle. That's why it was a duel in the desert in Texas. And eventually, that race also increased that championship lead to 13 points between Vettel and Alonso. So all Vettel had to do in Brazil was finish in a particular top six or top five finish, irrespective of where Alonso finished, even if he won the race. But Brazil had other plans in terms of a season finale. Brazil 2012 is one of the epic season finales ever in F1. It had everything that one would expect in a title battle, a chaotic start that puts the protagonist on the back foot. And that's what happened. Sebastian Vettel on lap one, he was fourth on the grid. Alonso was eighth on the grid. So he already had the jump on his rival. And Alonso had to make a lot of ground. But what helped Alonso in that first part of the race, at least in Interlagos, was Vettel spun on lap one. He got spun on lap one. He was facing the wrong way at the Senna SS and it dead last. At the end of lap one, Sebastian Vettel was dead last in Interlagos, and one would have expected that is it. One would have expected that is done. Fernando Alonso wins his third title. But no, Sebastian Vettel was like, no, no, this is not the end. He fought his way back. Somehow, he fought his way back. Later on, rain came down. Things looked very, very sketchy. But if anyone had the measure of the field, it was Sebastian Vettel. He made his way through the field, and Fernando Alonso made his way through to P2. He was looking good in terms of uh, getting past drivers. He was looking good to maintain his advantage and achieve the best he can. From P8 on the grid, if you're getting to P2, Alonso is doing the best he can. But he had Sebastian Vettel charging back through the field. Rain came down, things looked very dicey, and Vettel was in P7. So mathematically, Vettel was still winning the title by one single point, and the next driver ahead of him was Michael Schumacher in a Mercedes, racing his last race of his career. The 2012 season was when Schumacher was retiring and he was making way for Lewis Hamilton come to Mercedes in 2013. So Schumacher gives way to Vettel when he approaches, and that just gives Vettel that additional cushion. A passing of the baton moment, one would say. The two Germans, the hero helping the prodigy, saying, "Yeah, here you go. That this is your time." And yeah, Sebastian Vettel got that T6 place sealed to himself. It was a safety car finish, and that's how it went down. Alonso P2, Vettel in P6, and Vettel winning the championship by 3 points. It was an all-time classic, and one of the classic racetracks gave us that. But yeah, Interlagos was back then famous for giving these kind of title deciders. 2007, 2008, 2012, and it always went down to the wire. So one would wonder why Interlagos is not the season finale venue. With Abu Dhabi paying a huge amount, it's very difficult when a venue pays to be the season finale. It's difficult for classic tracks like Interlagos to get that honor once again. But yeah, hopefully someday we will have an Interlagos season finale and a season like 2012 where we have multiple teams, multiple drivers in the shout for winning races. And perhaps winning the championship. And 2012 almost was that season by giving multiple drivers in the championship hunt. Eventually, it came down to two men in Vettel and Alonso, but several drivers, Kimi Raikkonen at several points in the season, Kimi Raikkonen, Lewis Hamilton, Jensen Button, Mark Webber, they looked like they could be the championship contenders. So yeah, that's the story of the 2012 season. A season where we had seven different race winners in seven races, six world champions on the grid, five different teams winning races. Yeah, this is not a 7-6-5-4-3-2-1 kind of situation. It can be, but that's the story of the 2012 season, and I'm looking forward to bring many such stories, many such iconic races as this off season goes on, and we wait for the 2024 season to begin. So stay tuned till then.